I lost $200,000 in 3 lines. $200,000 a year. That was my value, my price, my identity. My name is Elisa Moreno, and 3 years ago, I had everything. A penthouse on the 18th floor with a view of the Manhattan skyline. Designer suits that cost more than my mother's monthly salary. $300 dinners per person at restaurants where you had to reserve 2 months in advance. And a schedule so packed, I didn't have time to even call the woman who gave me life. I worked for one of the most prestigious financial consulting firms in New York. Not just the city, the entire state. I was a senior account executive. I was 31 years old and had risen higher than anyone in my generation at the company. Higher than those with Harvard MBAs. Higher than the partners' sons. Higher than anyone. And I was proud of it. Tremendously proud. But there's something nobody tells you about success. Something the motivational books don't mention. Something the life coaches avoid telling you, because if they did, they couldn't sell you the dream. Success is hungry, and the more you give it, the more it demands. It's not that success rewards you and that's it. No. Success tests you, stretches you, squeezes you dry. And when you think you've given everything, it asks for a little more. I worked 14 hours a day, sometimes 18. There were weeks when I slept 4 hours a night and felt guilty for sleeping that much. I answered emails at 3 a.m. from my bed, eyes swollen and heart racing, because if I didn't respond before everyone else, someone would take my place. I canceled plans with friends. I didn't even bother making up excuses anymore. I simply stopped answering their messages until they stopped writing me. I postponed vacations year after year. I had accumulated days off that I never used. And every time my mother called me from Houston, I told her the same thing, always the same thing, with the same mechanical voice, with the same lack of emotion. Mom, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back. Later, always later. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. And next month became never. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it as necessary sacrifice, as the price of success, is what you had to do to be somebody in this life. In July of 2019, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I remember the exact moment I got the call. I was in a conference room on the 42nd floor. There were 8 people around a mahogany table. My phone buzzed. I saw my mother's number, and I sent it to voicemail. 30 minutes later, when the meeting ended, I listened to the message. Mija, I need to talk to you. It's important. The doctors, call me when you can. I called her 3 hours later. I was in a taxi on my way to another meeting. The doctor said she had 6 months, maybe less. Do you know how many times I visited her in those 6 months? 4. 4 times. Only 4 times in 180 days. The hospital was 25 minutes from my office when I traveled to Houston. 25 minutes. Less than it took me to eat lunch. But I always had something more important. A call that couldn't wait. A presentation I had to finish. A client who needed attention. My mother was dying 25 minutes away, and I chose a spreadsheet. The first time I visited, she could still walk. She met me at the door with a hug that lasted longer than usual. I didn't notice. I was checking my phone over her shoulder. The second time, she was in a wheelchair. She asked me to stay for dinner. I told her I had an early flight. The third time, she was in bed. She held my hand and told me something that I didn't understand at the time. She said, Mija, Time is the only thing you can't buy. I smiled, kissed her forehead, and told her I had to go. The fourth time was the last. On January 14th, 2020, my mother died. I arrived 40 minutes late. I was on a video conference with a client from Tokyo. The nurse called me 3 times. I saw the calls, and I decided the client was more important. When I walked into the hospital room, she was already gone. Her body was still warm. The heart monitor showed a flat line, and the last thing I did while she took her final breaths was check my email. I wasn't there to say goodbye. I wasn't there to tell her I loved her. I wasn't there to hear her last words. Because I was on a video conference I don't remember, about a topic that didn't matter, with a client whose name I've already forgotten. That destroyed me. It destroyed me from the inside in a way I can't explain with words. It was as if someone had turned off a light inside me. But it didn't stop me. Do you know what I did? Do you know what my reaction was to the death of the woman who brought me into this world? I buried myself deeper in work. The pain was unbearable, so I buried it under spreadsheets and quarterly reports. I worked harder, more hours, more weekends, because if I stopped, if I paused for even a second, the pain would catch up to me. In March of that year, I was promoted to senior executive. My bosses congratulated me. They gave me a bonus. They told me I was the best of my generation. And I smiled, because that was the only thing I knew how to do. Smile and produce. Produce and smile. And for 2 more years, I continued being a machine. A perfectly calibrated machine that generated money, closed deals, and felt absolutely nothing. My most important client was Don Armando Villegas, a 60-year-old businessman, owner of a hardware store chain he had built from scratch. He started with 1 small store in a humble neighborhood and ended up with 17 locations in 3 states. I had been his financial advisor for 7 years. I knew him better than his accountant, better than his lawyer, better than anyone in the professional sphere. Don Armando lost his wife Laura in 2017. Cancer. The same monster that took my mother. But I never asked him how he was doing. I never sat down with him to talk about his pain. I never gave him proper condolences, the kind that someone deserves when they lose the love of their life after 35 years of marriage. I just sent him a flower arrangement with a corporate card and a formal email that said, "My condolences. I'm available whenever you're ready to resume our meetings. Whenever you're ready to resume our meetings." That sentence haunts me to this day. On June 12th, 2022, Don Armando turned 60. He invited me to his party, an intimate celebration with family and close friends. He told me I was important to him, that he wanted me there. I told him I had a meeting. The meeting was to review a spreadsheet that could have waited until Monday. But in my world, spreadsheets were more important than people. A week later, on June 19th, I received an email. I opened it thinking it was another request for financial analysis. Another task for the machine. 3 lines. Just 3 lines that destroyed 7 years of work. The email said, "Elisa, I'm ending our professional relationship. You're no longer a person. You're a machine. And I no longer want to do business with machines." I stared at the screen for 10 minutes without moving, without blinking, without breathing. Don Armando represented 40% of my annual quota. 40%. Without him, my numbers didn't close. Without him, I was vulnerable. A month later, the company let me go. Not with a scandal, not with a fight. They simply called me into an office, thanked me for my years of service, gave me a box for my things, and walked me to the door. I lost the penthouse. I couldn't pay the rent without my salary. I lost the car. The finance company took it back. I lost the designer suits. I sold them at a consignment store. I lost everything I thought defined me. And for the first time in my adult life, I had no idea who I was. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back, without the title, without the office, without the salary, without the packed schedule. Nothing was left. In October of that year, I was sitting in a cheap downtown cafe, a $2 coffee instead of an $8 latte, crying in front of my laptop, trying to write a resume for a job I didn't want, in an industry that had chewed me up and spit me out. And then a voice spoke to me. "Why are you crying, dear?" I looked up. She was an older woman, hair white as snow, dark eyes that seemed to have seen 1,000 lives and remembered everyone. She wore a faded purple cardigan, worn but clean, and held a cup of chamomile tea like it was the most valuable treasure in the world. "I lost everything," I told her. I don't know why I answered. Normally I didn't talk to strangers, but something in her eyes made me feel like I could. My job, my apartment, my identity. She sat across from me without asking permission, as if that seat had been waiting for her all morning. She looked me right in the eyes, directly, deeply, and said something that changed the entire course of my life. "Did you lose everything you built? Or did you lose everything that was destroying you?" I didn't know what to answer. The words got stuck in my throat. "I'm going to ask you a question," she continued, without breaking eye contact, "and I want you to think about it before you respond. Don't answer quickly. Really think about it. Who are you when no one is watching?" I opened my mouth. I closed it. I opened it again and closed it again. I had no answer, because for 31 years, I only existed when someone was evaluating me, when someone was measuring me, when someone was grading me. Outside of that, I didn't know who I was. Her name was Mercedes Salazar. She was 78 years old, a retired literature teacher. She never married. She had no children. She lived alone in a small apartment full of books and plants. And for the next 8 months, she taught me more about life than all my years of college, graduate school, and corporate work combined. Mercedes had a secret she kept for 63 years, 63 handwritten journals, one for every year since she turned 15. Her entire life documented in blue ink, in notebooks of every color and size. "When I'm gone," she told me one day, while we drank tea in her living room, "I want someone to know I existed. Not because of my achievements, not because of my money, not because of my professional title, but because of my stories, because of what I loved, what I learned, what I felt, the nights I cried, the mornings I laughed, every moment that made me who I am." In June of 2023, Mercedes died in her sleep, peacefully, as if she had simply decided to close her eyes one last time. She left me her 63 journals and a mission. "Elisa," her final letter said, written in trembling but firm handwriting, "don't let my story die with me. And don't let others' stories die either. The world is full of people who think their lives don't matter, that they haven't done anything extraordinary, that they have nothing to tell. They're wrong. And you're going to prove it to them. Accompany, listen, document. Today, I am what Mercedes called a soul guide. I accompany people who want to leave their legacy before they go. I listen to their stories. I document their lives. and I help them understand that every life deserves to be remembered. And I created this space, the Voice of Legacy, to share those stories with you, because I learned something important, something Mercedes taught me in that cheap cafe with her cup of tea and her purple cardigan. Death is not the end. Being forgotten is the end. If my story touched you, I want you to know something. Mercedes left me a mission, and part of that mission is you. I created something special for you. It's called the 10 Legacy Questions. Find your voice. They're the first 10 questions Mercedes taught me. The questions that help you start documenting your story, to remember who you are when no one is watching. They're completely free. The link is in the description and in my bio. Start your legacy today. Claim your free guide now. Answer one. Just one. And you'll feel something you didn't expect. Something deep. Something real. Something no salary can give you. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Because in the next episode, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share publicly. 3 months after Don Armando fired me with those 3 lines, I received a letter. A handwritten letter. In his trembling handwriting. In blue ink. And what that letter said made me cry, more than anything I had ever experienced in my life. More than my mother's death. More than losing my job. More than everything. But that's for the next episode. I'm Elisa Moreno, your soul guide, and your story deserves to be told. Start your legacy today.